Welcome back to Beyond the Buzzer, episode 3. I'm here again with Austin. What's up? How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Not much going on this week in the sports world. Just some minor stuff. Obviously, we had the Wentz trade last week that we'll get into a little bit, but yeah, excited to go again this week. So I guess we'll start with the Wentz trade that we just talked about. What are your thoughts on it?
So in my opinion, I think Indianapolis won the deal. I think that bringing Wentz back to Frank Reich, who was his offensive coordinator in Philly, was a very good move. He went from going from one of the worst offensive lines in the league to probably the best in my opinion, especially with guys like Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith, who have been really, really good. He also has Jonathan Taylor, who's a top tier running back, in my opinion. He's going to get a few probably wide receivers in the draft. Now, Indianapolis doesn't have to worry about taking a quarterback, which is nice. And from the Eagles' point of view, I think that a third and a second and maybe a conditional first could work. I think that it depends on how they play this year and how Wentz does. I think that, in my opinion, though, I think they did pretty well on that. It should be weird to see, or it should be different to see if they go quarterback in the draft now, because people are saying that Philly, it wants to bring in competition for Jalen Hurts, which is kind of surprising because after last year and all they did to get Hurts as their guy and draft him in the second round and go over and draft over Carson Wentz, it should be interesting to see if they go Fields or Lance or another quarterback. What do you think, Dylan?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a point of interest and see what the Eagles are going to do in the draft. Maybe they go wide receiver, as we talked about last week, with Jamar Chase, some of those good guys up there, or they can go quarterback, as you said, Fields or Lance. But in my opinion, I think the Eagles they got kind of screwed. I mean, they only got a third and possibly a second round pick, and I mean, Wentz is pretty injury prone. He could not play 75% of the season if it turns in. The deal is if he plays 75% of the season, it turns into a first round pick. That's why it's conditional. So he can if he plays less than 12 games or whatever 75% is, that's very possible for Carson Wentz. He is an injury prone guy. But I think it is a good change of scenery for him. Obviously, this year was not a good year. Threw a bunch of picks. Ended up getting benched at the end of the season. He had a rift with Doug Peterson, not a very good relationship anymore. So it was very good for him to get out, and I think he's going to be really happy. Obviously, playing with that great offensive line, like you said, one of the best in the league. He's got some good receivers out there. T.Y. Hilton, who had a little bit of a resurgence at the end of the season. Michael Pittman, who showed a lot of talent. Guys like Zach Pascal, Paris Campbell, guys that are talented, and that Colts offense can be really good. A lot was their defense last year doing a lot of the work, helping them win games. Now they get Carson Wentz, which can be a great tool for the offense.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see whether they re-sign T.Y. Hilton as he is a free agent this year, but there's totally other options they can go, especially with receiver in the draft. There's a very, very stacked receiver draft class this year. There's a lot of guys that can go first, second round, so it should be interesting to see what they do. Speaking of wide receivers, will the Jets try and move on from Sam Darnold and draft a quarterback at 2? Or will they draft a receiver and build around Sam Darnold? I heard there's an NFL executive that said that the Jets will be moving on from Sam Darnold. I think it's way too early to tell because I don't think the people within the organization even know whether they're going to move on from him yet. There's a lot of rumors about Zach Wilson being linked to them. I've heard people say that Penei Sewell could go there and be on the other side of the line as Mekhi Becton, or they could draft a wide receiver because that was probably their biggest issue. And I think wide receiver is a bigger issue for them than quarterback is.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard a lot of things from different sources from all around, the league, and some say they're going to stick with Darnold. Some say they're going to draft Wilson. Earlier, they said they were going to draft Fields after his huge game, 6 touchdowns against Clemson. And Penei Sewell was one of those guys in the beginning of the season that said, "Oh, the Jets are going to go grab him." So there's so many, different perspectives, different ways they can go. In my opinion, I think Darnold is a good quarterback, but I think they just need like a culture change. Like Darnold wasn't working out. And I think Zach Wilson is one of those transcendent new modern quarterbacks. A lot of people are comparing him to Patrick Mahomes. He's not that mobile, but he can throw on the run. He can throw bombs. He's a pretty talented guy. And I think it wouldn't be a bad pick if the Jets did grab him.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I think that he is the new wave of the quarterbacks, as you said. He's very similar to a guy like Kyler Murray. He likes to scramble around a lot. He had 10 rushing touchdowns last year. So it should be interesting to see what the Jets do. Um, so moving on from that, Kenny Galladay. I heard that if the Lions were to move on from him, which it seems like Galladay is not too happy with Detroit from what we've been hearing, and they would go and franchise tag them, and their asking price for a trade would be a second round pick. So as a Giants fan in particular, would you be willing to give up a second round pick, our second round pick this year, which is pretty high, to get a guy like Kenny Galladay who could be a solidified wide receiver one, and then in the first round you could take another position of need?
I mean, I don't know. I think from Galladay's standpoint, he definitely does not want to be in Detroit, I believe. He just lost his quarterback. He's getting Jared Goff, who's nowhere compared talent-wise to Matt Stafford. And I think he's definitely going to want out. If they do tag him, that second round pick is too high for Galladay. He played just 5 games last season. He did play well in those games. He caught, I think, three touchdowns. He's a really good red zone target. He had a couple 100-yard games this season in the 5 games he played, but I think he's really uninterested playing in Detroit. If he did have some passion to play there, he probably could have played more than 5 games. I don't think the injury was too serious. But yeah, I do think he wants out of Detroit. As a Giants fan, I don't know if that second round pick is it for Galladay, who, as I said, is injury prone and isn't such a star studded guy, but definitely has the potential to be that on the Giants as the number one wide receiver. What do you think?
So my opinion on it is that Galladay was not drafted as one of those premier wide receivers. He came out of the blue. He went to like an Eastern Michigan or a Western Michigan. I forgot which college he went to, but it was a very small D1 school. He lit it up as wide receiver there, and he translated over to the NFL when no one was really expecting him to be a big time guy. And he really has not been able to stay healthy or on the field much. So giving him a long-term deal, which seems to be what he wants instead of a franchise tag, might not be the best in the best interest of an NFL team, but in the best interest of him. So it should be nice to see where it ends up with that whole situation with Kenny Galladay, because I think that he went healthy. He is a top 20, 25 receiver in the NFL,
I
but he
think
also
higher
has
than that. I
healthy,
think top 10. I think top 10.
arguable.
I think top 10. 2 seasons ago, he had an amazing season. And I think he was a Pro Bowler, which would put him at top 10. So, I mean,
All
even
right.
though Pro Bowl is voting and everything is kind of weird, still puts him as the upper echelon as one of the receivers in the league. So now we can transition to Russell Wilson, who kind of might be getting traded, probably not, but heard a rumor the other day that a third of the league wants him, and obviously, that third could easily turn into half, as it's Russell Wilson, and he's one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league. But the asking price is 3 first-round picks. So what do you think about that asking price? What do you think about the possibility of him getting traded? Let me know.
All right. So in my opinion, it depends on where he goes. Teams like San Francisco. If it's San Francisco going for Russell Wilson, yes, I'll trade 3 first-round picks because those are going to be low end first-round picks. Those are going to be in the late 20s. And how many times do those really pan out? Probably one out of those 3 picks will really pan out to be a very good player. Um, if it's Russell Wilson to a team like Oakland, on the other hand, I would not trade 3 first-round picks because there's a chance that Oakland doesn't win as many games. It depends on where you are in the league. If you know your team pretty well, like as a general manager, you know what you have in-house. You know when your team is ready to win and when your team isn't ready to win. For example, the Lions, they knew that they weren't winning anytime soon, so they move on from Matt Stafford. A lot of teams are going to be looking to move their quarterbacks. I think that Russell Wilson can be moved. Do I think he will, though? I think he's going to end up staying there. And I think that they're going to try to build some offensive line for him because what he has right now is not sufficient.
Yeah, and he was unpleased with the offensive line. He did he make a statement or it was released by like his agent or something?
Yep.
I don't know. Either one of those, but he wasn't pleased with the offensive line. He wants more protection. Throughout his career in Seattle, he really hasn't had a great offensive line to throw behind. So he was urging for that a little bit, and I think he's just putting some pressure on the Seattle front office to go out and get him some O line this season so that he can have that protection. He's not going to hit as much. Um, I don't think he will be traded, but as you said, a team like San Francisco, they should go after him if he becomes available. Especially San Francisco maybe for Deshaun Watson. As you said, those picks won't mean that much. They have a great defense. They have a win now mentality. Obviously, they got screwed by some injuries this season, but they made the Super Bowl last year, so they definitely have the potential to get right back in the top teams in the league. They have an amazing defense. I know Richard Sherman's not going to be re-signing there, but they have some other guys in the secondary that could definitely step up. And obviously, they have Nick Bosa, Defensive Rookie of the Year, George Kittle, who was out a lot, Raheem Mostert, who was out a lot, Garoppolo, who they would probably end up trading to that team. And yeah, they just have Deebo Samuel. They have a bunch of weapons that could help them get right back into that upper tier in the league.
Yeah, it was a good point you made about Garoppolo. He has a very, very large cap hit. If they wanted to get rid of him, they would have to probably give a team a lot of money as well, because it's probably more than 20 something $million. And I think it's extremely high. But another team I could see in the running for a guy like a Deshaun Watson, although I heard that I don't think they're too interested, or a Russell Wilson, could be the Vikings. I think that they could upgrade from Kirk Cousins a little bit. Although Kirk Cousins had an extremely high completion rate, I think that adding a really good quarterback who's elite, like a Deshaun Watson or a Russell Wilson, with a guy like Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook, could be explosive. And I think that if they were willing to give up 3 first-round picks, that could be a team that should move their 3 first-round picks to start to win.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that tandem of Thielen, Jefferson, and Cook would be crazy. If you add Deshaun Watson, that would be virtually impossible to stop. But their defense is also lacking. They have a really bad defense. They need to upgrade on some of that. But I believe I heard a decent amount of time ago that someone on the Vikings front office said they're going to stick with Kirk Cousins and they believe in him. So, I mean, whatever the direction they want to go, they can go. But I think definitely adding Deshaun Watson would be a huge upgrade for the Vikings.
Yep. All right. So let's get into some MLB. Some big news this week. Fernando Tatis Jr., he's a young shortstop. He plays with the San Diego Padres. He just got 14 years for $340 million, which is an insanely large contract, especially for a young shortstop. A very long deal. He's going to be getting paid for a very long time. A lot of players wrote to him like, congratulations about this. It's a very big deal for baseball in general, because it looks like it's going in the right direction. Their entire infield is worth like $812 million over the next, I think it's like 10 years or whatever, which is absolutely absurd in my opinion. But I think that this is the beginning of many. I think guys like Trevor Story, Carlos Correa, Francisco Lindor, and Corey Seager look to do the same. So this is a very, very groundbreaking moment for baseball, because now it's the players that are going to be getting paid these extreme amounts of money. So what are your thoughts? Anything?
I mean, I just have a quick question for you. Is that the largest or the longest deal in MLB history given out so far?
I think it may be one of the longer deals given out. I mean, it technically is still Bobby Bonilla, because the Mets have been paying
Yeah,
Bobby
that's what I was
Bonilla
gonna say.
forever.
They're
But
still paying him.
we're going to be paying him for as long as they're paying Tatis. No joke. But I think it's probably one of the longer deals out there. I think Stanton got 1 year less, maybe. I think Stanton got 13 years. But it's still a very groundbreaking moment for baseball to see a very young guy who proved only in 1 season, maybe 2, that he is a top legit shortstop and probably the best shortstop in baseball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, 14 years is long though. I mean, the league is always changing in every sport. The league is constantly changing. New guys are getting drafted. Different guys are getting released. People are retiring. I don't know if a 14-year deal in any sport. I know he wants to get his money, and I know a lot of players want to get their guaranteed money. But I don't know. If I was Fernando Tatis, I wouldn't sign a 14-year deal. If I was Giannis, I don't know if I would have signed the super max, because everything's always changing. What if the Bucks get a second round exit this year, or what if the Padres don't meet their expectations the next couple of years and he's trapped there?
Yeah, the crazier part is that, to me, I think, is that by the time he's done with his contract, we're going to be 30. So just to think about that, we're going to be 30 years old when this guy is in his last year of his contract, is absolutely insane to me. like, whoa, this guy just got extended for such a long period of time. And you're right, the games are always changing, because let's just say they get rid of salary cap in the NBA, because baseball, there's no salary cap, there's luxury tax. So if you go over that, you have to pay a certain amount more and more each year, every single year you're over it. But yeah, I think it's insane. I think it could be a good look for the game, saying that, hey, let's get your guaranteed money, and you could have opt-outs within your contract, because there's probably some sort of opt-out in there over time where the Padres could say, hey, Fernando, sorry, you're not the player that we thought you would be. If he has a down year or two and like he's at the middle of his contract, they could say like, I'm sorry, but we're going to opt out, and you could go to free agency, which is kind of cool, I think, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, with a year that long, you got to have some opt out because obviously everything's changing. Maybe he doesn't want to stay there in 8 years, which is still a super long time. An 8-year contract is insane, especially for sports where guys are always changing, and free agency, the landscape is always changing, like I just said. So 14 years being tied down is, in his case, I guess it's good. He wanted the money. In maybe some other people's opinions, not as good of a deal.
Yep. So I had some rookie of the year odds for the MLB. So I thought that the AL rookie of the year, as of right now, just some preseason prediction, was that Randy Arozarena, the outfielder for the Rays. I think he's going to win rookie of the year, although he only played in like the shortened season last year, and he's technically now considered a rookie, similar to like Ben Simmons. I think that he's going to win rookie of the year. He hit very, very, very well in the playoffs. He destroyed the Yankees. He destroyed the Dodgers in the playoffs. He played extremely well as a rookie. So I have him as my AL rookie of the year. And in the NL, I have Ke'Bryan Hayes. He's the third baseman for the Pirates. He's a young and up and coming kid, and he could translate over very well to the MLB. So that was just my rookie of the year predictions I wanted to throw out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm confused how Arozarena is a rookie. He literally played last season. It's different with Ben Simmons, who didn't play his rookie season. And I don't think Ben Simmons should have won rookie of the year. I think Donovan Mitchell got robbed. You as a Sixers fan will probably disagree, but think about it. Hold on. I'm going to go a little tangent here. Sorry. Ben Simmons, all right, he got hurt his rookie season, but he was still a member of the Sixers. He was working with the Sixers trainers. He was working with Sixers coaches. He was watching the games. He was sitting on the sideline. He was still part of the organization, whether or not he was on the floor. He wasn't a rookie. And that happened with Michael Porter Jr. A year ago. He was considered a rookie because he sat out his entire rookie season. But I think if you're with the team, you're with the team trainers, you're healing that injury by the actual team. You're a part of the team. You shouldn't be a rookie.
Yes, but in the same breath, there's other guys like Keldon Johnson, for example, who kind of used that NBA getting drafted and staying in the G League for a year as kind of like a redshirt year that they would consider in college. So let's just say you like Keldon Johnson, for example, didn't play any games last year.
I think he played some games.
He maybe played like one or two, but technically he's still considered a rookie, which I don't know. I think it's okay, in my opinion. If you're not playing all the games, then you're considered a rookie, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I have a different opinion on that, and obviously there was a lot of controversy with the Donovan Mitchell and Ben Simmons kind of thing. So maybe that could arise with Randy Arozarena. Are they officially considering him a rookie?
Yes.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess he's the front runner. I don't really know any other rookies. I'm not a huge MLB guy, but I mean, he played outstanding. Like, I think he had the most home runs in a single postseason.
He had crazy stats, something like that.
It was crazy out of nowhere. And he destroyed the Yankees. So, all right, yeah, next.
Add a little bit of icing to the cake. All right, so next, let's go with some all-star reserves for the NBA. That comes out tonight. So for the East, it seems like it's going to be Harden is a pretty much lock. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum also seem like they will be locks. I heard Zach LaVine, if he gets robbed, I don't know how. He's been one of the best players in the
game. Lock. I don't care how many games the Bulls have won. Lock. All right, who else we got? Julius Randle.
Julius Randle, is he a lock?
Oh man, he's a lock. He's a lock.
I mean,
the Knicks are one game under 500, and he's leading in basically every stat category besides block, points, rebounds, assists. I think I don't know about field goal percentage. I think he has career highs in both field goal percentages.
But do you think they take him over a guy like Nikola Vucevic or a guy like Jeremy Grant?
I mean, there's only 7 reserve spots, which sucks. And Vucevic is averaging like 24 and 11, which is a little higher than Julius Randle. But I mean, you have to consider the Knicks are winning games. The Knicks are 15 and 16 right now, I believe. They're the 6th seed in the East, and the Magic are bottom of the conference. So as well as Vucevic is playing, and as well as many 30-point double doubles he's going to have, Julius Randle is still helping the team win. So I think that it's going to be Julius Randle getting that spot over him, Sabonis getting that spot over him, and then we have one more wild card that could go to a guy like Chris Middleton. It could go to Jimmy Butler, Trae Young, maybe even Gordon Hayward. Probably not Gordon Hayward. Maybe even Jeremy Grant. Those are some guys that can get that final spot. But I mean, yeah, only 7 spots. It's very limited. There's so many talented guys like Trae Young. He's the leader of the Hawks, and they have not very lived up to their expectations this year. A lot of people thought that they were going to be a really good team, a playoff lock. But Trae Young is still playing great,
Yep.
and he might not even make the All-Star game. Jimmy Butler is leading the Heat, averaging near 20 points, and he's the backbone of that team. They haven't won as many games, therefore he might not even be an All-Star. What do you think?
I think that the NBA, your All-Star getting selected to the All-Star game shouldn't be based on your team's record. I think it should be based on the player. For example, I mean, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they've been carrying the Celtics. James Harden, when Durant's been healthy, and Kyrie Irving, they're carrying their team. All 3 of them are going to make the All-Star game? Probably. But it's just that it shouldn't depend on your record, because guys like Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic, who are putting up a lot of points on these awful teams, should be making the All-Star game as well. And I don't think that 7 reserve spots is the right number, because there's so many players in the NBA that are extremely, extremely talented, and they don't deserve to be snubbed. Like, for example, last year, Bradley Beal, he got snubbed for, I think it's been the last 2 years, Bradley Beal's been getting snubbed at the All-Star game.
Now he's an All-Star starter.
Exactly. So, I mean, it made up for it a little bit as a Gator fan. It made up for it a little bit being a starter. But, I mean, these guys on bad teams should be making the All-Star game. Although these other guys like Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris probably won't make the All-Star game, which is probably the right thing because they're not averaging more than 20 points. Embiid made it. I mean, your best player on the best teams will make it, but the best players on the worst teams should also make it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's definitely an argument to have. But obviously with the 7 spots, there's not that much space. So a guy like Vucevic is most likely going to miss out. And a guy like Julius Randle, who's putting up very similar numbers but on a more winning team, is probably going to get that spot. A guy like Sabonis, the Pacers are a top 5 seed. He's probably going to get that spot. So, I mean, there's a lot of different variations that it could go just because of the number of reserves, performances on a winning team, on a bad team. But we'll see how it goes tonight. We'll move on to the West now for the reserves. So, Austin, take us through that.
So we got Donovan Mitchell, Damian Lillard, Paul George, Rudy Gobert, Devin Booker, and they need a replacement for Anthony Davis. And that replacement could be in the likes of DeMar DeRozan, who has had a very underrated year, Zion or Brandon Ingram. I think they'll maybe take one of them because they're the best 2 players on the Pelicans, or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So what are you thinking?
Yeah. So I think, who did we say in the beginning? We said who are the locks? Donovan Mitchell.
Locks are Donovan Mitchell, Damian Lillard, Paul George.
I'd say Gobert is a lock.
Gobert,
People might
Devin Booker.
Yeah, and Booker's not completely a lock, to be honest with you either. I mean, he's had ups and downs. Recently, he's been playing amazing. He's had multiple like 35 plus games, and I think he deserves a spot. But there's also an argument where should you take Chris Paul, who's drastically changed that entire team and made them such a better team, even though they did go 8-0 in the bubble. Without Chris Paul, they would not be as good as they were on the bubble last year. Obviously, the bubble was very different. Jamal Murray's not bubble Jamal Murray. TJ Warren is not bubble TJ Warren. So the bubbles was a whole different thing. That's a whole different conversation. But Chris Paul has transformed that team. And, just like a guy like Jimmy Butler, he's not putting up the best numbers, but he's the backbone of that team. He's leading that team to wins. So, and his leadership and his veteran leadership is so important to guys like Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. Um, I don't know, just because it's a lot of it is based off stats, if he will make it. But I think guys like Devin Booker could definitely get in. DeMar DeRozan is an interesting case because the Spurs don't get a lot of gravitation, a lot of attention towards them, just because they're the Spurs. They've always played boring basketball, with Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. It was always, fundamentals. And Tim Duncan was a highlight player. Tony Parker wasn't a highlight player. Manu had some stuff here and there, but they're not really, like, if you think about it, like they
That's Popovich. That's all
yeah,
Popovich. That's his
they
system.
won 5 championships, and the Warriors won 3. And the Warriors in popularity at their peak was here, and the Spurs were here, just because of the style of basketball they played. So the Spurs in their history don't get a lot of recognition. However, DeMar DeRozan is having a great season. His playmaking is almost up to 6 assists, I think, which is drastic compared to his days in the Raptors and his early career. And he's the mix of DeJounte Murray, DeMar DeRozan, Keldon Johnson, who's had a really good league. Jakob Poeltl's playing well. And DeMar DeRozan is leading that team, and he's playing really well. I think he could get some All-Star consideration.
Speaking of DeMar DeRozan, I heard he could be moved at the deadline. Him and Kyle Lowry, former teammate of his, could both be moved at the deadline. I heard, especially Lowry, though. I've heard Lowry's name being linked to contenders like Philadelphia. I've heard Milwaukee, another guard instead of Drew Holiday. But it'd be interesting to see Kyle Lowry get moved after all this time of being in Toronto.
Mm-hmm. And Kyle Lowry's probably going to be pretty sought after for those contending teams at the deadline, because we've seen him be a great spot on a championship team just 2 years ago on the Raptors. He really helped them win that championship, and they probably wouldn't have won it without him. And I think teams are going to see that and see how good of a leader he is, a veteran leader, and try and bring him onto their team to make a playoff or a championship push.
And he's a really good facilitator. And in my opinion, he would be great for Philadelphia. They would have to trade Danny Green. They'd have to probably trade a guy like Matisse Thybulle or a Tyrese Maxey or maybe a Cork Maz and a few first or whatever it would be. But the thing is, with Kyle Lowry, you know what you're getting. You're getting a leader. You're getting a really good facilitator. He went to Villanova, so he has Philadelphia roots. And another thing with him is that it also allows Ben Simmons to play off the ball, and he doesn't have to bring it up, which might be better for him, because when they had a guy like Jimmy Butler bring up the ball, he was playing much better. So we can see, I think, and he's only on a very team-friendly 1-year deal. It's $30 million, but it's a team-friendly deal because it's a 1-year deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for Philly trying to make a championship push, and they're first in the East, that could definitely be a possible landing spot for Lowry, as the Raptors try and transition out of that Lowry phase into the Fred VanVleet phase, which would definitely work because VanVleet's been playing amazing. All right, now I have a very special question. A lot of people are talking about, I see Twitter like raving about it, especially with that Kawhi call last night. Did you see that? The Harden flop offensive foul. So I have a burning question for you. All right.
Got it.
Is the reason NBA teams and players are putting up more points? You see Bojan Bogdanovic scored 20 points last year, and that was rare. That was rare for someone to put up 30 points. 20 points 30 years ago. Only the most talented players did it. So it is the reason that some NBA teams and players are scoring so much more, is the reason because of the bad defense that's been playing, or do you think it's because the better offense that's been playing?
I think it's a combination of both, and here's why. The NBA is becoming a much different game than what it used to be. The game used to be focused around centers: Hakeem Olajuwon, Patrick Ewing, Shaquille O'Neal, so many other centers. Now it's becoming a much more perimeter-centric game. It's a lot of three-point shots. For example, who's the number one team in the West? The Jazz. What do? They are the number one shooting three-point team in the NBA. And same thing with Golden State. Golden State, they built their team around three-point shooters. The NBA is becoming a lot more of a three-point game. A lot of people are shooting from behind the arc more than ever before. They're probably on pace again to shatter the most three-pointers attempted in a season, which it always seems to be every year. But That's why the players are averaging more points, because back in the day, they weren't shooting as many 3-point shots and they were a much more big man focused offenses. Now they're a lot more perimeter centric. On the other hand, the defense in the NBA, in my opinion, has become a lot more soft. These players are much better offensively nowadays, I think, in my opinion, than they used to be, because they are averaging more points and they are shooting a lot more threes. But the defense is also lacking because you're not allowed to touch anybody anymore. For example, if you saw battles between the bad boy Pistons in the 1980s and compare that to defense played now, it's a totally different game, because now you have to learn, as Kevin Garnett said it best in his interview I was watching, you can't play defense with your hands anymore, and you used to be able to. So it's a very big transition from the game of what it used to be to what it is now. And for the better or for the worse, it is becoming a much more 3-point centric game, and it's a new look for the NBA.
Yeah. So I'm kind of leaning towards the reason that people are scoring more points is because there's better offense being played, while you were kind of a mix of both. I'll explain both of my sides. So, um, offensive players are so much more talented now. You see guys like Kyrie Irving with, I think, the best handles of all time. That's an argument with him and AI, maybe. I think he's one of the most craftiest players we've seen on the ball, with his handles, with his hesitations. Same with Steph Curry. He can hezzy and fake shoot a three, float it right over, easy bucket. Like Luka Doncic is throwing behind the back passes around the defender. These guys are crazy, and their talent just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper to other levels. Centers are now 3-level scorers. Joel Embiid can shoot a three, but he can also post down and hit a fade. Like, it's crazy. Guys are doing so many different things that they could 20 years ago. Centers, if you were a big man and could shoot 20 years ago, you were the hottest commodity in the league. If you were Robert Horry and you were a big man and you could shoot, you were getting on a good team. Now that's everywhere. Miles Turner, Julius Randle, big men are shooting all around the league. So I think people are scoring more points because it's a positionless basketball game. Centers can shoot, point guards can shoot, everyone can shoot. Everyone can put the ball on the floor, make a move. It's becoming positionless. People are way more talented. And I think that's why. So on the other hand, I'll let you go first. You got an argument? I'll let you go first.
Yeah, no. It has to agree with you. Basketball is becoming a positionless game. For example, Giannis could play the 1, Giannis could play the 5.
Ben
Another
Simmons can
thing to
defend the
go along with
one.
that is like, what you can go. I
I was
sorry.
saying Ben Simmons can defend the 1. Ben Simmons can defend the 5.
Very similar player, in my opinion, because they both can guard both, and they both really don't shoot a lot of threes, neither of them, in my opinion. But
Continue.
Vernon Carey, this is my prime example of this. Vernon Carey Jr., he was a prospect last year. In the old NBA, like in the 1980s, 1990s, Vernon Carey would have been a first-round pick. He fell to the second round this year, but he would have been a first-round pick because he's a dominant post scorer. He's left-handed. He has really nice post moves, and he's a solid rebounder. In today's NBA, that is not what he wants. That's not what the NBA wants, because he can't guard a 1. He can't guard a 2. He can't guard a 3. Probably can't guard a 4, but he could definitely guard a 5. And his dribbling is okay. I mean, there's a lot of things that you need in a player now. That's why a guy like Luka Doncic is so valuable, because he can guard more than one position. He's a very good ball handler, and he could dribble. And that is what the NBA is steering towards. And they're steering away from players that can't play more than one position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, just as you said, like Vernon Carey, a guy like that, like guys like Clint Capella, who's not a shooter, guys like, I know he's not as good, but Cody Zeller, these guys are becoming forgotten. And if you can't shoot, if you can't hit a mid-range shot, you're not going to be as valuable to a team as you would like. So that's why you see Blake Griffin in the 2010s, high flyer, dunker, post move, aggressive guy, huge part of the Lob City team, which got a lot of success. Now he's in Detroit. He's not playing, but 2 years ago he was in Detroit, and we saw him pulling up for threes. We were like, "Is this a completely new Blake Griffin?" The league is transforming. Guys are becoming so much more talented. Blake Griffin hasn't dunked in almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Guys are completely transforming, and to argue the side of, oh, it's because worse defense is being played. I totally agree with you on how the game is becoming softer, and I think it's because guys are flopping and guys are creating more fouls, and it's hard to play defense without being physical. You really only see it in NBA in playoff games where the refs let them play and they're playing aggressive defense, and it's a fourth quarter, and it's a close game, and LeBron James is coming to lock up Luka Doncic or whatever. Kawhi Leonard's coming to lock up Luka Doncic in a game 7 of the playoffs. You don't really see as much intensity in the regular season as you do in the playoffs, and the refs let it go more in the playoffs because that's what the NBA should be. And I think because more fouls are being called, less defense is being played because these guys can't have their arms out, or a guy's gonna Trae Young is gonna lean into the contact, Jimmy Butler is gonna lean into the contact and get a stupid foul. And some of those guys get to the free throw line 6-8 times a game. Trae Young is like drawing like the leader in drawing fouls a game, and a lot of his fouls aren't fouls, but he sells it. And I think as an NBA fan, it's kind of getting hard to watch. But if I'm Trae Young and I can do it so easily and get 3 points, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, a lot more fouls are being called and a lot less defense is being tolerated, I think. And to your point before is that about the defense being allowed to go get slid over in the playoffs, and you're allowed to really play defense in the playoffs and you're not allowed to play defense in the regular season. Is that really fair? Because teams like the Hornets and the Magic, and I'm just naming bad teams, the Wizards, for example, those teams could probably play good defense in the regular season. Guys like Russell Westbrook, for example, he's a very good defender, and he's not allowed to play defense, I guess. And if that was to translate over to a full season of him and the wear and tear and allowed to play real defense all year long, maybe they could be a playoff team with Bradley Beal, but they don't allow these guys to play real defense, in my opinion. And they just let fouls and flops and creating space slide a lot more than they should. And that's causing teams to lose games that they shouldn't be losing, and people afraid to foul and fouling out, and technicals being called on plays that shouldn't be.
Yeah. And a lot of people say that, players aren't really trying on the defensive end anymore. And from watching basketball, I think that's not true. I think a lot of people still go out there and play hard defense. It's just that players' offense is just so much better. And the saying is better offense or good offense beats good defense. And, Luka Doncic hitting a step back or for example, Paul George versus Damian Lillard in that game 7 a couple years ago. Paul George, great defender. Damian Lillard still hits a 35-foot fadeaway to close out the series. And good offense is going to beat good defense most of the time. And I think there are still good defenders in the league, and people definitely still try on defense. You always see guys contesting shots. And I mean, you see guys getting dunked on. If people didn't try on defense, no one would get dunked on because no one would go up to block a shot. So guys still play defense. And obviously you said Ben Simmons, Giannis are two of the best defensive players in the league. So there are defensive specialists, and guys are out here still playing defense. So I don't think it's that no one is really playing defense, although we have seen a decrease in defense over the years. I think it's just offensive talent just keeps getting higher and higher and higher and higher and higher.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean that's the never-ending argument. Yeah. So all right, do we really have anything else to cover?
Nope, I think that's good.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right.
So
Be sure to like, comment, subscribe.
Thank you guys for watching episode 3, Beyond the Buzzer. We're gonna look to get some special guests on, some guys to change the flow up a bit, just so it's not us two. Make it a little bit more interesting, hopefully in the near future. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you back next week. Peace.